So we're here in Monrovia, Liberia with Mahmud Johnson, the founder of J-Palm Liberia. Thank you so much for making the time to meet with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming. This is really cool.
So maybe we can start with you telling us what exactly is J-Palm Liberia.
J-Palm Liberia is, I would say, a social business. And our mission is twofold. One is to create opportunities to create economic opportunities for farmers to grow their incomes, for young people to get employment. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is within the beauty space. We are trying to create skin and hair care products specifically for Liberians, for Africans, by Africans, products that actually work for us and that represent us in ways that we would like to be represented.
What was your motivation for starting J-Palm?
I grew up in Liberia at a time when there was a lot of turbulence. We had civil conflicts when I was 10 years old. And so in my teenage years, most of the conversations that we had all around us, whether it was on the radio, TV, newspapers, was all about rebuilding. It's about economic development, economic transformation, and how could. And there was this sense that we all as Liberians should be a part of that rebuilding process. So when I eventually finished high school, went to college in the US, after I finished college, I decided to come back home because I felt that my journey from Liberia to the US was very improbable. I mean, you couldn't have told me 10 years prior that I would have gone to college abroad. And so I felt like I had been blessed in a way that most people had not been before. And I felt that I should come back and try to reach a hand back, if you will, to create opportunities so that other young people can have similar experiences that I had and have a chance to be able to realize their full potential. And the way I think about it is, when I was growing up, my parents were probably what you would consider to be poor back then. They didn't have a lot of money, but whatever little they had, they invested that in my education. At a very young age, I went to a really good school. And so when I think about just transformation in Liberia or in Africa in general, immediately I think about, all these moms and dads out there. How can we create opportunities so that they can be able to earn incomes for themselves? Because every parent that's out there, most parents know what they want for their child. Most parents have a vision for their children, but most times they don't have the opportunity to be able to really see that vision come to life. And so my thinking is, let's create opportunities so that the parents can be able to earn, decent incomes for themselves. And then we trust that they will now go out and make the kinds of investment in their children's futures that will lead to prosperity for the entire country.
But I'm curious, why particularly going into oil and
palm.
kernel exactly?
It was so that was my general mindset. Really was about giving back. And initially, I thought that maybe I was going to work for the government. But in my when I was in college, I did a course in the business school, and then I did an internship also at the business school, and that really opened up my mind to the role of the private sector and businesses in solving social problems. For me, in my experience, I feel that business probably have more of a bigger potential in Liberia to address some of these challenges because most of the time the government doesn't have the resources. There's a lot of bureaucracy, through the whole legislative process, and oftentimes, things don't get done as fast as they need to get done. Whereas from a business standpoint, we have much more control over that process. I mean, for example, here, we can decide in the morning that we want to have XYZ thing done, and then before the evening, that particular thing is done. And so I figured that maybe I should focus on business. And the question of why oil palm in particular was, I remember when I was in college, I came to Liberia for Christmas holiday during my senior year. And I was having a conversation with my aunt. So she used to sell palm oil. She used to travel to the villages, the rural areas, to buy palm oil from the smallholder producers and aggregate the oils and transport to Monrovia and sell to the retailers. And she was saying to me that she ran out of business because she couldn't find palm oil. And that didn't make sense to me because palm trees grow naturally in Liberia. I'm sure anywhere you look in this place, you see palm trees. And so that was how I became curious about oil palm and started to do research on it. And what I found that was really shocking. So I found out that about 35% of the palm fruit in Liberia literally remain on the trees and go unharvested every year because the farmers don't have access to tools to efficiently process their palm oil. And even when they harvest, of the 65% that they harvest, they end up losing about 50% of that expected yield because, again, they have to use their hands to make the palm oil. But on the other hand, there's so much demand for palm oil. Liberians eat palm oil in almost everything. And if you think about it, just in a global context, palm oil is talking about more than $90 billion worth of palm oil that's traded every year. So it just didn't add up that we have all this palm resource and we have the ideal climate for palm, and then almost all the smallholder farmers that are making palm oil remain in poverty. What I found out was that farmers didn't have access to machines to make the palm oil, but then also infrastructure. Some places, literally there's some places where the only path to a village is to walk on a log bridge over a river. There's no cars that are going there. Most villages have only one single day where traders go in from Monrovia to buy their produce. And so for that reason, it also dampens how much people want to produce. Because if you produce something that you can only sell once a week, there's a serious liquidity challenge. And then farmers have to walk maybe 1-2 hours to get to the market. So you can only carry as much to the market. So all of these things compound to create this situation where we have all this demand for palm, but we have sort of limited supply. And then, so that was one aspect of it. I looked at it on the supply side, but then I also looked at it on the demand side. We did a survey of the retailers who were selling palm oil. And it came out to once a week, on average, once a week, they were running out of stock. Within the same country, they were running out of stock, right? And then you also look at the supply chain in terms of how they get it. Most of the traders who are selling palm oil don't have their own vehicles. They have to get on public transport, go to a village, get on a motorcycle, go to the smaller villages to aggregate the palm oil, and just spend a ridiculous amount of money in transportation. I think we're spending about 40% of their profits just to get the palm oil to the market. And so my vision back then was to say, let's work on the supply side. Let's work at the farm level, work with the farmers to increase productivity, remove some of these constraints, and then buy from the farmers, aggregate the palm oil, and transport the palm oil to Monrovia and sell to these retailers. So you're solving problems on both sides. On the farmer side, we are there's more of a last mile problem. They already had the farm, they had the access to the palm fruit, they had the land, they didn't have machines. So we placed machines in the villages so that instead of spending 8 hours, our farmers could spend between 10 to 30 minutes doing the same amount of work, which meant that they started to harvest more because they were spending less time processing. And also they were doubling their yields because the machines are just much more efficient in extracting oils. So we work with the farmers, increase productivity, increase production, buy from them at the same rates that they would buy if they were to walk 2 hours to the market, and then aggregate the palm oil and we had a truck, so we transported to the retailers. So instead of spending 40% of profits and on average 1 day a week going out to find the palm oil, we could supply them. So that was the initial idea for the business, but we later on realized that there was a bigger opportunity with the palm kernels. So, for those who are not familiar with palm, the palm oil comes from the outer layer of the palm fruit, and then the inner layer, there's a seed where if you crack open the seed, there's the palm kernels. All the palm kernels are going to waste. We estimated more than 200,000 tons of palm kernels every year go to waste in Liberia. And there's just massive demand for palm kernel oil. So we decided to start making palm kernel oil as well. This provides an opportunity for the farmers to earn additional income from something that were throwing away just a few years ago. But then also the artisanal soap industry in Liberia. They had serious challenges finding palm oil. They're going as far as Guinea, and Sierra Leone to purchase palm kernel oil. So, we started making palm kernel oil and started supplying it to these folks. But again, the original mission of the business is how do we maximize value of oil palm so that we can be able to pay more to the farmers and we can be able to create employment for young people. And we figured that this is it's actually a really good moisturizer. Like I used to have a lot of acne, used it cleared my acne. I started giving the oils to my family members, and everybody had a really amazing story to tell about it, about how it worked some magic for them. So we started bottling it. We, started I think with like 500 bottles that we brought in from Ghana. Started bottling the oils here and placed them in a few supermarkets. And we started doing this in 2016, and 3 years later, we have oils, we have soaps, we have lotions, conditioners, shampoos, scrubs, and all these things. And the brand has really been embraced by a lot of people, and it continues to grow. And in that process, we continue to create employment for a lot of people. We have 30 full-time staff. Over the past 3 years, we've created more than 500 jobs for young people who come in and get the products and go and sell, and earn a commission on the sales. So we're not quite where we want to be, but it's been a very rewarding journey so far, I must say.
Wow, that's a wonderful story. So you mentioned that you grew up at a very turbulent time in Liberia, and there has been a lot of efforts to bring back Liberia and build it and grow it again. And you mentioned that how you would do that would be to come back and go and work government, exactly. Yes. So at what point did it become clear to you that that's not the best way to go about it, and I would rather, and I can actually do something else that would create more impact?
Right. I was thinking about it mostly from a sort of innovation standpoint. So I personally have a lot of ideas in terms of how to solve certain social problems. And I was thinking, some of these ideas that I have probably would never be able to get those things implemented in the government just because of how decision making works in the government. Whereas in a business, you have, relative to the government, there's significantly fewer stakeholders and decisions get made a lot faster. And so I was mostly thinking about that and thinking my own temperament. I'm the kind of person who, somebody once described me as having a bias for action. If I have an idea, I want to be able to run as fast as I can with it. And I feel like I would be very frustrated. But also, before going off to college, I did 1 year internship working for the government. And so when I was finishing college, I had conversations with several mentors that I had worked with in the government, and they were saying, "Don't do it. It's just going to take. It's a very slow climb." And so so I decided let me try the business thing, and if it doesn't work out, you can always get a job with the government, but let me try the business and see how well it goes.
Never know until you try. Huh?
Exactly.
You've mentioned that your family were even using the Kernel oil, and everyone was like, "Yeah, it's clear, it's solving something."
Yeah.
So I guess that they have been supportive.
Yeah.
What else has been your support structure in the process of opening up J-Palm and building it to what it is now?
I had a friend in college, Elliot Sanborn. He's American. And we talked so much about this business. Each time we usually used to go out to do dinner at least once a week. And each time, it was just like we talk about it nonstop. And so he was the first person that knew what I wanted to do, and he knew how much passion I have for it. So when I started, he made a small investment in the business. My parents as well helped a lot. When I came out from college, I was staying over at the house. In fact, we actually used their garage as the first office for J-Palm. But at the time, there were also some local resources for young entrepreneurs. There's a place called the Business Startup Center at the University of Liberia BSc. So I remember I came back to Liberia on the weekend, and on Monday morning I was in BSc office. Did a course on how to do a business plan, and through BSc I was able to access other opportunities. So Richard Branson had this thing called the Branson Scholars Program, where they took us to South Africa. They have a whole entrepreneurship center in Johannesburg, and we went through a training that really helped in thinking very clearly about what it is that we're trying to create. Most times people think of their product in functional terms, like, oh, I'm creating oil, I'm creating soaps. And what I learned from there is, how do you think about it from the consumer standpoint? And now I see it with the customers that send us messages on Facebook. They don't ask, do you have oil? They ask a question, do you have anything for stretch marks? Or do you have anything that's going to grow my hair? So just thinking about the business from the consumer standpoint, it shifted my mentality. And now when we think about the products that we're creating and how we do messaging around it, all of that is from that consumer standpoint. You put ourselves in the shoes of the consumers to think about what it is that they want. And it sort of ties into one of the original missions of the business, which is this idea, that we as Africans for a long time have not really been thought of as consumers, in the sense that most of the biggest companies in the world, the biggest brands, are not coming to Liberia. I know for a fact, are not coming to Liberia to find out what it is that we want and go out and create a product for us. Most times they create products for other markets, and then whatever is left over, it comes here, you put a dark skin model on it, and that's what is sold, right? So we are saying, let's figure out what process other big companies go through to create effective products, and let's apply the same framework, but place the African consumer at the center of that design process. So we're going out to local people and asking, what products are you using? What do you not like about it? What do you like about it? What is your ideal product? And we're using that information to create products that specifically work for people, for the skin type, for the climate that we're in, for the socioeconomic status, the price points, and all of that. And so I'm really glad about that.
Wow, that is so multifaceted. Because you have, on the one hand, the farmers in the rural areas, communities mostly. Then you have the retailers you mentioned, and then you have now the consumers as well. Exactly. That you're catering to all these different.
Exactly. And I should add, that's very intentional, because Liberia has a history of exporting raw materials. We have a huge rubber plantation, and we export all this rubber, but there are no companies producing rubber bowls or tires, and we saw that very starkly with the Ebola crisis, where so many people died because they didn't have access to gloves, to rubber gloves, even though we have one of the largest rubber plantations in the world in our country. We export iron ore. And I think it was just last month that opened the first steel plant here, and that's one of the reasons why the country remains underdeveloped, is because if you look at value chains, the raw material only captures a very small percentage of the total value, in that chain. And so our goal is to make sure that this thing is sustainable on the local level. We don't want to have to export the raw palm oil or palm kernel oil, but also we don't want to have to cater to another market, because we could easily have said, let's set this thing up here, create the products here, and then market it to consumers in the US or in Europe, which you make a lot more money. But there are just way too many people creating products for US and European consumers, and nobody's creating products for people here. So we'll make significantly less money, but people here deserve nice things too. Let's create products that people here can celebrate and enjoy. And if anybody else anywhere in the world likes it, that's fine. But our focus is on designing products specifically for people here.
Okay, I want to maybe take us a bit back. What was the process of, okay, I have an idea, I have done the research, I have all this support system and structures in place. what was the process of now bringing everything to market and actually starting business?
I mean, ultimately, we had to jump in. We had to jump in because I have a sort of analytical side that I could literally sit in front of a spreadsheet for hours and analyze all the different scenarios, which with hindsight is probably a waste of time because the spreadsheets never work the way they should work. I mean, in real life, life never conforms to the spreadsheets. So yeah, initially it was important for us to at least have an idea about what the demand was like, have an idea about what what the market was like, what the challenges and all that. I think in the early stages, the most important thing that we did was to understand qualitatively what the issues were. The fact that the farmers were not having access to machines, the fact that the retailers had challenges transporting the oils, and there was all this demand for it. So the qualitative information, we had to validate that to ensure that at least there was some sort of demand for this. And we had the models for what the business would be, what the oil yields would be, how much we had to invest, and how much profits we're making and all of that. But we didn't really have, with the kind of model that we were trying to implement, we didn't really have a lot of data to validate that. And so we had basically to be our own guinea pigs and go out there and try out these things and use our experiences to validate what the assumptions were. And I can tell you that most of the initial assumptions were wrong for so many different things. But it was important for us to do that ourselves. And I think the position that we have in the market now is because of the time that we spent back then. Like I personally was driving out 2-3 hours to the rural areas to talk to the farmers, to see for myself, walk the entire value chain. And so I have a very deep understanding about everything from the farm. I mean, I've slept in the farmers' houses, from the farmer straight through to the consumer who received this. And just walking that entire value chain, having a clear understanding about everything, about the challenges, the constraints, the aspirations, everything that everybody along the value chain, every challenge and every opportunity that's there, it enables us to now plan much better than just if we were to just sit in front of a computer and do internet research. It allows us to be able to almost see into the future to say, okay, here's where we are now, but and here are all the challenges that are in the value chain. Here are the opportunities. We're going to do this year. We're going to do this next year. We're going to do this the year after. And sometimes the timing on those plans may not be right, but the direction is right. Most of the things that we're accomplishing now were things that we planned for 3, 4, 5 years ago. We just recently got a machine. I was looking at an email. We got a big machine to process palm kernel oil, and we started the conversation with this supplier in 2014, and we just got the machine like a month ago. So yeah, it does take a while, but I think what was important was really understanding what the key variables were, what was changing, what was staying constant, and deciding what direction we wanted to take in the market. Where do we see ourselves? What position do we want to take in the supply chain, and then make strategic plans to work in that direction.
You mentioned that you really took the time to understand what happens in each different step of the value chain. I'm just curious how involved you are in everything that's happening in the company, and what is like maybe your team structure and how you're involved in every single thing.
I'm very involved, probably too involved, and that's actually something that we're working on now in terms of how do we decentralize that structure, and the reason it is that way is because we're still innovating. I still consider us very much as a startup. We're still refining the products that we're making, how we deliver to our customers, how we manage the business, and it's very helpful to to have a sort of frontline view of how everybody's jobs or what everybody's jobs functions are. What is the workflow, so that we can now we can I can take those data points, or we as a team can take those data points and come back to the drawing board and say, okay, here's what we need to do to make deliveries more efficient. Here's what we need to do to make the packaging neater, all of those things. So, for example, now we deliver to consumers. Customers order for our products through the website or through social media, and within. So we just look at the numbers. Actually, more than 90% of our orders get delivered the same day. About 10% don't. And the reason why we have relatively efficient delivery process is because of the innovations that we've continued to create over the time. When we started initially, it was very chaotic. People would order and it would take weeks. They wouldn't get the orders. So I had to be personally involved in everything. I had to, get in my car and go out and drive and deliver to a few people to get to see where are these people ordering from, so that we can know how to organize software that allows us to organize, the geographic information so that we can optimize those routes, right? What is the, sometimes we get on the phone and talk with the customers. As we're talking with them, we're getting an understanding about how to communicate with customers so that we can train our telemarketing people so that they know how to better deal with the customers. Sometimes I myself get into the Facebook, Instagram inbox and respond to the customers, because customers are ordering stuff, but they're also, the language that the customers use when they're asking for stuff, that informs how we talk about our products. So initially when we started marketing the products, we're talking about it in very sort of American terms. We're talking about organic and natural. And in this environment, people do care about it, but it's not just for the sake of it being natural. People care about it for sort of functional purpose. Is this going to clear my acne? Is this going to grow my hair? And so instead of talking about, natural product, feel good, we talk about, we have this oil here, it's going to help to clear your acne. Here's the evidence. Here's the video of people that used it before and cleared the acne. And that was much more effective. But also looking at those messages that are coming in gives us a sense of what people want. What is it that they're asking for that we don't currently have, so that we can figure out now how do we now go out and create those products that people are asking for. So to an extent, it's a sort of trade-off. It's definitely not ideal to be, as a CEO, to be involved in every single aspect of the business. You want to make sure you have other people, and we do have those people. But it also helps, from a sort of innovation standpoint, to make sure that we're constantly improving. And we will get to a point where I'm satisfied with how things are, and then we can relinquish it and just define it so that people can go out and get stuff done.
Are you exhausted?
I get exhausted every 5 months. It's around that time, so I need to take maybe a break, 2-3 days, travel, or you stay at home, whatever. But I mean, it is. I would say it's physically exhausting, but mentally it's very exciting and stimulating, because there's always something that should be done. There's always something that should be done. And going back to what I said earlier about, I have this desire to, get things done fast. The speed at which you go from just having an idea to implementation is very rapid. And it's almost like a kind of high, if you will. Like, okay, we have this idea. Here's what we think is going to work. Maybe increase the sales. This so strategy. Let's implement it, and we implement that, and we look at the numbers. So, for example, just yesterday, right? And usually I get inspiration when I'm running. So I went for a run yesterday morning, and I had this idea. So we have a customer database, and we look at it's set up so that we have a call. It generates a call log for customers to follow up on customers that we haven't heard from in a while. Maybe they haven't placed an order in a while, and we have folks downstairs who call them and call them and have conversations. And sometimes those people order, but I think only about. I shouldn't say only, because it's probably a good number. 15% of the people that order when they get calls from our telemarketing agents. So yesterday morning I had this idea. What if we go for a discount on the phone? We call people and say, "Oh, we have a discount for today, 15% off. Would you like to buy?" And they did that, and I think about 26% of people ordered. So things like that, going from just like having an idea in the morning run to being able to implement it and see what happens in real time is something that is very invigorating, and it's there's never a day where it's just boring. There's always something to look forward to.
Very curious, how did the process of installing the first machine work? What do I have to picture there?
So I had some savings from college, and this friend of mine put in some money. The machine, and the machines at the time when we started, we worked with local blacksmiths. So they used, local materials like, car spare part to assemble this machine that worked for this particular purpose of making the palm oil. And so the initial financing was self-finance and investment that my friend put in. And that, of course, we didn't have a lot, so that ran out very quickly. I had to get a part-time job working as a research consultant and use part of my income to run the business. But I mean, surprisingly, it was actually very difficult to get the first machine installed. So after the war in Liberia, what happened is we had all these NGOs that started, doing all these projects in rural areas. And people apparently what happened is that many times some NGOs will make promises things done. Improve your yield. Most people are very skeptical about that. It actually took us about 6 months to convince the first farmer to allow us to put our machine on his farm. And this is, I'm talking about like a full 5-hour drive. I'm driving on very bad roads, having all this stress going out there. And each time I go out there, you make a promise. I'm gonna call you next week, and the call never comes. I probably made like 10, 12 different visits there. And then one day out of the blue, I just get a phone call. They say, you can come and bring the machine.
So did the farmers have to pay to get the machine installed?
No.
So basically you're saying, hey, let me come. I will make your work easier. You don't have to pay. I'm the off-taker of everything that you produce. And they were skeptical and said, no, you cannot do it.
They were. There's, I think people, so you have to think about the fact that most of the people in rural areas, very, very low income people. And when you are operating at that sort of bottom of the pyramid, there's not that much appetite for risk. Yeah. There's an established procedure of making palm oil that they're used to, and they're using the income from that to send their kids to school, to take care of their families. They don't want to risk it on something that probably may not work, And so I suspect that's where it came from. But once we set up the machine, what happened is that a lot of people came and they saw it working, and then the news spread. So all the adjacent villages, now all of a sudden the chiefs were coming and say, can you bring this to my village? Can you bring this to my village? And so we have a very long way to go, because we only work in a few communities currently, but the plan is for this new production season, which starts in January, is to expand to more communities.
Okay, and I'm very surprised that you created the first machine yourself. So it was a technical innovation, basically.
So there was a project financed by USAID where they brought in people to train Liberians on how to make these machines. But it was made. It's like sort of made to you have to order it, tell them how you want it to be made, and then they make it for you.
Okay, and how much does a machine like this cost right now?
So they have different varieties. They have one that's more of a manual mill that people use. You have two persons push it around to create the oil, and then they have one that has an engine attached to it. So the manual mill is around $750, and the one with the engine is about $3,000.
At what point, did you see, okay, will be able to sustain myself from this, although I make this investment in the community first? because your business is the market, right?
Yep.
Because you take it and then you sell it to the market,
Yes.
and yet you have this social purpose of helping the supply side.
Yep.
At what point did you know that this model is working, or was that from the very beginning?
We're still trying to figure it out. I'm just kidding. It took us. So we started in 2013, and I would say probably last year. I mean, it's to be honest with you, it's ridiculously challenging to do business in Liberia, and I've put my team and me, we put our all into it, and it's just it ultimately, I mean, like eventually something's gonna break. Like you use the machine 2, 3, 4 days, and then the part breaks, and then you have to spend all the profits to go and repair the machine. So it was a very difficult process. And then also there's the fact that I felt that we had to move at a very fast speed, to be able to realize our potential as a business. And so we're reinvesting everything. We make money, and we put into developing a new product, or put into getting a new machine and whatnot. It took a very long time for us to get to the point where the business was stable from a sort of financial standpoint. But this is a very long-term bet. It's not a short-term thing. And so once we see that we're moving in a direction that we wanted to move into, that is enough for us, because we know that once we are able to get everything in place that we plan to get, then everything is going to move. It's kind of business where there's a lot of moving pieces. It's not possible for you to say, well, I'm going to get this one big machine, and all of a sudden everything is okay. You got to get the machine, and then you have to get the supply chain right, and you have to get the marketing right. You have to have the right people on board. You got to get the investors, the financing. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and sometimes things don't align at the same time. We take it one step at a time. We attack one big goal, we get that done, and then we move on to the next thing.
What would you say is the biggest challenge for you to do business in Liberia, just because you mentioned that now?
Oh my gosh. Well, number one, there's almost no financing available for entrepreneurs in general, but more so for young people. Most of the banks, if you go to a bank, the bank is going to require collateral in the form of non-movable assets. So you got to have a house or a farm, that you can now give as collateral. That has to be 2.5 times the value of what you're asking for. And then you're talking about 15-25% interest. You got to start paying. Some banks even require you to start paying within a month. Some banks require you to start paying within 6 months. And for something that we are doing, again, it's a very long-term investment. It's not possible for me to start paying back bank loan within 5-6 months. And so we basically have not been able to raise any financing from any of the local banks or any funds locally. All of the financing that we raised, we've had to look on the internet and see pitching contests in other countries and apply and go out and tell the story. And we've been successful to some extent in getting financing from a few of these international contests. So financing is one of the biggest challenges. Another challenge it has to do with people. I mean, of course, I'm very involved in the process, but it's not possible for I alone to run the business. There's a lot of moving pieces in this business, and you need to have trusted people in key positions that are competent. And the challenge we had starting out was the fact that because we had this prolonged civil war in Liberia, it led to this mass exodus of trained professionals. So after the war, we had a very undersupply of qualified people. But then in addition to that, most of the jobs that were available after the war were either government jobs or NGO jobs. There aren't that many people who have worked in startups to build a business from the ground up. So there's that sort of mismatch. And then the few qualified people that are available, we cannot afford them because there's a lot of demand for them, limited supply, and so most of them just end up working for, the big multinational firms or working for the UN and the government. And so we've had to find people who have some skills and then work with them, mentor and train them. And so, not only do we have all these technical challenges, but now we have to now focus on building the skills and the capacity of people that we're working with.
What are your sales channels right now?
So we have 4 main sales channels. We have the field sales reps. So these are young people who they come in, they get some sales training, and they take the product and then go out to the local markets, to the communities, and they market the products directly to the consumers. And that's also another innovation, if you will, because when we started, most people were selling into the main the retail channels, and many people didn't really have sales reps. And we even when we started, we're selling in retail, but we decided, it's very challenging to get the products in the retail. But then when you get in there, the products don't move themselves. You have to do the marketing, which we didn't have a budget to go and do billboards and ads on the TV and all that. So, and maybe if we have an ad on the radio, people may not even buy from that. So we decided, let's have some sort of insurance on this, wherein we only spend money when we make money. So you have these young people, they come in and they get all the product knowledge and they go out and it's this sort of back and forth conversation that they have with the customer. Because if a customer hears an ad on the radio, they may have some questions that may not be answered in the ad. But if they're interacting with the sales rep, then the sales rep is able to answer all their questions. The sales rep can show them, have their phone and show them, here's images that we have of people who have used the product before. And so it turned out to be very effective in just creating awareness and increasing the sales volume for us. So that's a long story. But so we have the field sales reps. We have retail, so we have products in most of the major supermarkets and grocery stores. We have something called mini retail. So these are the smaller shops, mom and pop shops in communities. And our fastest growing channel is the online sales channel, so where we have people ordering through Facebook, through Instagram, and through our e-commerce website.
This is something that I also really love about e-commerce and how it's done in many African countries. Actually, it's very direct, and it's just amazing that you can deliver what you said. I think 90% of your orders within within the day of ordering.
Exactly.
To deliver that. That's just mind blowing, And
exactly. I mean, So when we started, we had retail and then we had the field sales reps. And the challenge with that is that we didn't quite know who was buying the products because we're only interacting with the field sales reps in the retail stores. So we didn't know who the end consumer was. And so it makes it a little bit more challenging to get feedback on the product. So the online sales, is helpful in so many ways because we know exactly who the customer is that's using the product. We can look at the customer order history and see how often they order, what products do they like more of, what product that do they not like, what feedback do they have about the product. People may use the product and say, I like the formula you used last time. What's changed? So we are more agile. We can be able to respond much faster to feedback from customers because we're in direct conversation with the customers. As opposed to going through retail, which the retail stores don't give us any data about who they buy, who they're selling to.
If you could partner with anybody, who would that be, and what would you ask them for?
If I could partner with anybody, I would want to partner with somebody who has experience in building a global brand with local roots, if you will. So, for example, in Morocco, right? If taking argan oil, and argan oil has become this global, very highly priced product that people know to be from that particular country, that particular region. We have a similar opportunity with palm kernel oil not just in Liberia, but in West Africa, to take what grows naturally here and first serve ourselves and then also share this with the rest of the world. This is something that's been used in our communities for hundreds of years. Mothers have used it, grandmothers used it, and now we are making it in a modern new form. And it's something that we want to, of course, serve our own people, and if possible, share with other people around the world. But the question now is, how do we communicate about that? Especially given the fact that historically Africa is just talked about very negatively. So that each time people hear about Africa, they always think about some, starving kid, and it's not really seen as a source of quality products. If you hear about Paris, you think you have a certain image. If you heard about Liberia, it's very different, right? So now, how do we rebrand and be more truthful in talking about ourselves as Africans and what it is that we represent, and what are the really basic things that we have in our own countries and environments.
Yeah, and I think one of the opportunities you have there is that here you can get palm oil in a very sustainable way,
exactly.
And you don't have to chop down forests to,
exactly.
Because that is usually an image that you nowadays have
exactly.
connected with palm oil, right?
Exactly. Yeah, maybe we should talk about that because sometimes when I travel to Europe or the US, as soon as you mention palm oil, the first thing that people say is, "Oh, this is bad." Isn't that bad for the environment? And the interesting thing about it is that oil palm actually originates in this region. Originally, so you have what you call the oil palm belt. Several West African countries where, because of the climate and because of the soil, palm trees grow in the wild. So back 100 years ago, nobody was coming to say, "I'm going to make a plantation of palm." It grew like grass, right? And I think in the 30s or in the 40s, the Southeast Asians came and took, that natural variety and genetically modified it to optimize the oil yield and made all these plantations. And because palm oil is very versatile, it grew, and now it's the most traded vegetable oil in the world. It's massive demand for palm oil. So it led to this sort of intensification of planting palm in Asia, which, because of all this economic pressure, now the plantations are clearing animal habitat and destroying rainforests to plant palm. So that is the global palm oil story. But there's such a disconnect because something that came from this region, has developed Indonesia and Malaysia tremendously. But the farmers in West African countries still remain poor, even though they have this natural original version of the oil palm. So what we are trying to do is to tell this story that there's this other form of palm that, number one, nobody's planting these trees, so that you don't have issues around land rights. These trees are owned by the communities, right? So nobody's been dispossessed of their land to plant this because nobody's planting it grows naturally. Number two, there's not an environmental concern because, again, you don't have to clear rainforest, you don't have to clear anywhere. How it happens is the palm trees grow, the birds may come and eat some of the palm fruit, drop the seeds here and there, and new trees grow. So it's a natural cycle. You don't have that. And number three, by increasing demand for this natural form of palm oil, it actually creates opportunities for literally hundreds of thousands of smallholder farmers in West Africa to grow their incomes. Because if we're able to tell this story about this palm oil being better, functionally better, but also environmentally better, we can attract a higher price for it, which almost all of that goes directly into the pockets of the farmer. Versus if you buy palm oil from Malaysia, all that money is going into the big corporation that's probably going to use that money to go and clear more rainforest to plant more palm.
Well, that sounds like a story to share.
Exactly.
I have two more questions. My first question would be, what was the reaction of your parents, your friends, when you decided, hey, I'm not going into government. I got this college degree in the States, but now I'm starting my own business. What was the initial reaction?
My dad was like, "Are you sure?" But one thing I'm grateful for is the fact that my entire life, the way I would describe it is that my parents treated me for as long as I can remember with respect, and respected my decisions, and so they always trusted me to make the right decision, or at least maybe if I made a mistake, to learn from the mistake. So there hasn't been any pressure at all to say I need to do this. The only pressure I have now is that once in a while they're asking me when am I going to grad school.
Okay.
But I mean they've been supportive from the beginning. I would share this story. There was a time when we started the business, and it was going really bad that we didn't even have money to pay the employees, and my parents paid the salaries of the employees for that month. And they didn't sit me down and ask me to rethink my decision. And they've been supportive throughout the entire process. And now, they are starting to see, what I saw back then. So it feels good.
Oh, that's lovely. Did you get a scholarship for the studies in the US?
I did. I got a scholarship to study in the US. And so I got a 90% scholarship, and then remaining 10% I got some financing from the government because I used to work as an intern in the government. I also got a scholarship from Firestone Corporation, local corporation.
My final question would be, what would be your advice to a young Liberian today?
My advice to young Liberians is my main philosophy for success in life is to do your best wherever you are. So if you are a student in school, you want to be able to exert yourself to the maximum degree. The framework that I have is I don't like to regret. So for example, when I was in school, when I got my grades back, I don't want to say, oh, I could have done better on this. It's like, okay, in a particular moment, maybe the grade could have been better, but in a particular moment, I couldn't have done better. I did all that I could, right? And so whether you're a student in school, whether you are working in a company somewhere, you're working for the government, you're starting your own business, is to always do your best in a particular moment, because you never know who's watching you, you never know who's looking to support you. My entire life story in terms of like how I was able to get a scholarship to go to school abroad, and the business that I do now, the financing that we've attracted, and all this is because somebody was watching silently and saw the effort that we're making and decided to step in to help. So the advice that we have for people is whatever it is, whatever your dreams are, wherever you find yourself, the only formula for success is to do your best in a particular moment. Many times people try to plan 10 years ahead, 20 years, and plan everything in life. And most times those things don't work, because if you have a very rigid plan of what you want to be, there's a tendency now to wait for people to look at you, to have eyes on you before you start to do your best. But if you're doing your best, even when people are not looking at you, ironically, that's when people start to look at you because, yeah.
Do your best even when people are not watching.
Even people are not watching. Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Very inspiring.
Thank you.